Trying something new is never easy. Stepping outside of our comfort zone and into the unknown takes courage. Despite all of our planning, doing something new is always risky. And the more innovative and different it is, the higher the risk. The risk of someone not liking your idea. The risk of someone misunderstanding your intentions. The risk of your customers not liking your new product. And the risk of putting all our efforts into something and it not working out. Yet, over and over again, there are some people who stand up to that challenge and find the courage to innovate. They show up despite the challenges they face. They reassure their teams despite knowing that things may not work out. And they somehow pull things together. How do they do that? How can we learn how to do more of that? Hi, I'm Monica Kang, and you're listening to Dear Workplace by InnovatorsBox.
Be creative and think about the best ways to help each and every one. It's not easy to do, right? It's easier to, just offer a one-size-fits-all, lecture and, here are the assignments and turn them in, But yeah, listening to your students and then adapting, right? Like adapting the way you do things to help those learners.
That grit is very important. That willingness to fail is very important. And, we at Rungam, we have failed with several products and we have lost, or I would say spent millions of dollars in some of the innovative products. And we have literally failed, which is really is very painful in my heart because I feel guilty that I have taken time, money, and efforts of my team and we have invested in that, and I was not able to make some of those innovations successful. But I'm not going to give up.
I had to stack them in the show, so decide which story was going to go before the other one, which story was going to be last, which anchor was going to read them, print them on time, and then defend it, because then people came in and the anchors would want to change words or the way the story was stacked. Or then when we got to the 9 o'clock meeting, then the news director would critique my decisions. When you think about it, as a 20-year-old, I was making management decisions. I was also, making gut calls and having to defend them. So learning how to be confident in what I was saying.
There were lots of ways we tried to make that process better. But we still found that was a pain point within our business. And so we took a step back and said, as an innovation group, and said, look, we've been trying to kind of fix this process, but how can we fundamentally blow it up, right? What can we do to say, what does the customer really want? They really don't want a rental car. They really want to get from point A to point B.
Welcome to Dear Workplace by InnovatorsBox, where we study trends, changes, and challenges at work. I'm your host, Monica Kang, and today I'm excited to dive into a question that we get asked a lot as a company that specializes in unlocking creativity in the workplace. How can we be more creative and innovative? Let's start with, first, understanding innovation and creativity. In the workplace, we often use it interchangeably, but the two, though related, are different. Creativity is coming up with big ideas and the act of thinking differently. Innovation is executing and implementing those ideas into reality that leads to new products, processes, and company growth. You cannot have innovation without creativity, and you cannot get to innovation by simply having good ideas. Unless people feel psychologically safe, encouraged to take risks, and know they could be appreciated for their new risky ideas, people will not be willing to think of new ideas, aka be creative, that could lead to innovation. So, how you feel in the workplace influences how you show up with your new ideas and how you execute them. Who are the people who encourage you to be courageous and be yourself? The other aspect is that innovation comes in many forms. The glamorous, successful product innovation we see in the news is just one kind, and there are many ways innovation can take form in the workplace. The two references I find helpful are the 3 innovation strategies and the 4 types of innovation frameworks. In strategy, you can take innovation 3 ways: product innovation, process innovation, and business model innovation. The 4 types of innovation framework then speaks of how those strategies may play out. Some may be radical innovations where both the product is new and it opens a new market, while some are incremental innovations where you innovate in an existing market and tweak an existing product. All innovation is relevant as it will permit growth, new possibilities, and find new ways of doing more with less. Which goes back to our word for today: courage. Doing all of that takes a lot of courage, and today I want to learn more about how some people found the courage to innovate and how they even encourage others to continue to innovate. It's both a humbling and rewarding process. Meet Terri Broussard Williams, the founder of Movement Maker and the tech public policy expert based in Austin, Texas. She truly is a fire starter. In every field she worked, she led a movement and set a new bar. From journalism, government lobbying, healthcare advocacy, to now tech policy making. She goes out of her way to set new paths, including finishing her book, Find Your Fire, even after she had a major concussion. Yes, I'm serious. To understand her source of courage and how she navigates all these different roles as an innovator, we have to visit how she felt from the beginning of her career in journalism, where she had to constantly stand up for herself.
I want to go back to where I started because I think it'll illustrate what you've laid out. So I got my start in television newsroom as an adult. I was a teen reporter, then I did producing and then some reporting. But when I was a news producer, I was required to go, and I worked overnight. So there was no one in the newsroom. So I had to decide what stories were going to run. I had to write them. I had to stack them in the show. So decide which story was going to go before the other one, which story was going to be last, which anchor was going to read them, print them on time, and then defend it, because then people came in and the anchors would want to change words or the way the story was stacked. Or then when we got to the 9 o'clock, meeting, then the news director would critique my decisions. When you think about it, as a 20-year-old, I was making management decisions. I was also, making gut calls and having to defend them. So learning how to be confident in what I was saying, doing it on the fly really quickly, because I get in at 2 o'clock in the morning and the show had to be printed and we were on air by 5. And also, when you think about layering the pieces of the newsroom and the show, there's voiceovers, there's video, there's packages. I was learning cross collaboration in a matrix-driven environment at the age of 20. And so I think those skills are what make me a good lobbyist. Being a public policy employee within a tech company, I'm not afraid to call one department and ask for a piece here, or call this person and ask them to help here, because I learned that in the newsroom. So those, we might not think that when we make a pivot in a career that they're connected. They're always connected, because that next thing that you're going to do is going to come from a place of where you are confident, where you feel it's going to make you happy, and where you have experience and it's a strength. So the career paths might look different, but the skill sets are going to be so very similar.
Terri's confidence and courage comes from constant hard work and resilience. It's a lot of diligence. No wonder she is good at paving new paths. This makes me curious though. Why are some people able to thrive no matter how hard the situation is?
I think why some people thrive and why others don't, it's the topic of your podcast. It's because they're curious and they're creative and they want to be innovators. If you're not curious about lobbying, you're never going to start lobbying. If you're not curious about starting a business, you're forever going to stay, in this nuclear industry you were working in. I don't even know all the things you had to learn, but your insatiable appetite to learn and to be curious about how science worked is what made you a good entrepreneur in this space.
Agreed. Do you think being young helps? Does age matter when we innovate? Sometimes it feels like we have more to lose as we grow older or as we get higher up in the chain of command.
I don't know if age is a factor. I do think I was more fearless because I was younger. I had nothing to lose. I was making $30,000, when I made the pivot. So like it wasn't like I had to think about a family or a house or anything. My biggest bill was like my car insurance. So I was definitely more fearless. There was no financial ties. I was open to live anywhere. I was open to do all the things I could do to thrive. That might feel different now, but I've even made pivots later in life. And so I might not be as fearless, but because I've had all those experience, I'm confident in the decisions that I'm making. So for the people that are listening that might be waffling on, following a path or a calling that's theirs, just look for the things that point to where you find strength, confidence, and a support system. And I think you will find your fire, gotta drop in a pun, and truly be happy.
Find your fire. And Terri is right about age. While we may feel like we have more to lose in certain situations, the key is to build confidence and resilience through more experience. Because through those experiences, not only do we gain the eye to be more courageous and find new ways of thinking and doing things, but also find more allies who will understand us and trust us. Meet Nish Parikh and Parikh, co-founders of Gaab, a high-performing staffing and consulting company that focuses on disability inclusion. For over 25 years, they serve various companies to find innovative talent solutions by rethinking how staffing and diverse talent development can be done with education and employment innovation. But hindsight is 2020. The beginning wasn't always so easy. Even looking at how their whole career started, they share their humble beginning. Here is Nish.
If I had to describe my journey, my beginning of the career was as everyone else, right? It was rough, wrong place, wrong education, and not aligned with what is out there in the world. Applied almost over 500 jobs and rejection letters. That's how I really started in 92, between 92 and 93. But it has been an amazing journey. It's just carving a path, hustling, trying different things throughout this journey of, I would say, learning.
Wow, that's grit indeed. What helped you have that grit?
Courage is, get the best advice and guidance and support from people who you trust, who is your family member. I will start with Hetal and my family. They were amazing when so I think that's the first step. But then what I believe that only you can help yourself. But then it is all about how we connect to people, how we leverage and go beyond people we know, our friends and family, networking, working with and learning from people, trying different ideas. I think that different ideas, and when those ideas got converted into success, that's what has given me that energy.
The people we surround ourselves with matter. This goes back to what we spoke about in our last Dear Workplace episode, why relationships really matter at work. I asked if Nish could share an example of how people trusting him made a difference and continued to encourage him to try something different.
Curiosity and not be afraid of asking questions, right? In the world of innovation, I was in the beginning of my career, I was very shy because that comes with the confidence also and experience also. So that's natural to have that shy nature. But that curiosity just kept on pushing me and helping me build that confidence, because once I started asking questions, even though in some cases it was a stupid question, but that's how we learn and we get better. And that helps us build that confidence. And then, of course, then it's all about listening, understanding, and then not giving up. I think that grit is very important. That willingness to fail is very important. And we at Rangam, we have failed with several products, and we have we have lost, or I would say spent millions of dollars in some of the innovative products, and we have literally failed, which is really is very painful in my heart, because I feel guilty that I have taken time, money, and efforts of my team, and we have invested in that, and I was not able to make some of those innovations successful. But I'm not going to give up. One of the things which we have started doing now, and that is again not giving up, and just keep on doing things, of course, a little different way, because that's the key. Do it a little different, learn from those failures, and just keep on hustling. So that's what has been my journey as an innovator.
I appreciated Nish's transparency on this. If we aren't willing to invest the money and the resource to do something different, we can't get new results. I remember how I felt in my early days building InnovatorsBox. Even though I had all these new ideas, I wasn't growing as fast as I wanted to because I was scared to invest and try something new. How ironic it was. I was playing it safe. Of course, you don't want to overspend your budget, but you can't grow where you don't invest. I realized how my intentional investments in branding, web assets, or creating more content like this podcast made a difference in how we could serve more innovators and rethink culture and leadership development. So while it cost Ranga millions of dollars initially to develop an inclusive staffing solution for people with disability or autism, because they did not give up, they eventually found a unique solution and now led a lot of initiatives with various corporations like Bristol-Myers Squibb. And sometimes these innovations, as I said earlier, can be incremental. Professor Emily Rosado teaches literature and journalism at Montgomery College and shares how she had to adapt and innovate her teaching approach throughout the pandemic as she moved to teaching online for the first time. Like most teachers during this time, it wasn't comfortable. But as she explored how the online setting worked, she constantly wondered how she could improve something or do something different to make her students' experience easier, which led her to starting a YouTube channel with advice videos, something she wouldn't have thought of doing before.
When COVID happened, we were all just kind of, in a day, like, what's going on? What's happening? What am I doing? What are you doing? So yeah, one of the things that I felt like would be helpful for my students, because we were all getting used to, Zoom class and, this whole new medium that none of us were used to. And a lot of students were like really struggling with retaining information and, just being able to focus through a screen, which many of them have never had to do before. So yeah, I just took to YouTube to not just put, some of the content online so that they could rewatch it, but things that I thought might help them to feel better, right? So we were all like, missing our friends and missing being on campus. And as someone who, is a mental health advocate, I made some videos about like staying positive and, staying organized, how to get your work done when you're stuck at home all day and you just feel like you don't want to be productive. So anything that I thought would help them to feel balanced and to kind of like help them adapt through a really challenging time, I just, tried to make a video, offer whatever advice that I could, and then share it with everyone.
Now, part of you may think, wait, how come doing a YouTube video is considered innovative? You have to take a step back and hear where the intention is. Emily not only had a great idea and intention, but she went out of her way to make it happen. Her heart to serve her students and meet them where they are resonated with me so deeply that when I had a chance to do a virtual event with her, more than 10 plus students from her class would come to support her and thank her for her contribution and how they made their learning journey easier during this time. Emily shares honestly that this kind of flexibility is always important to have as a teacher, as there are always things changing even once classes are in person again.
I think for a teacher, any kind of teacher, flexibility is so important. It's one of those fields in which you're constantly evolving, you're constantly trying new things. Every time you feel like you have it figured out, you get a new group of students who are completely different, who have, different needs and different challenges, different personalities. So yeah, I just think being flexible and open-minded is really important. Like, I don't think I can stress that enough. The ability to kind of like adapt and to try things, risk taking, I think is key. Being willing to take risks, try things, if you have a total flop of a class one day, that's okay. I mean, at least you tried, at least you tried it, right? And you never know like what is going to be like the next best thing unless you try things.
You never know what will work until you try. I asked her why she always cared to empathize with her students. Why does she care so much about how students learn? How does that encourage her to want to do something different?
The more I thought about my own experiences and like where I struggled, and the more I thought about my students and where they struggle, it just made me feel like, the things that I've gone through and like the hardships that I had, I can use those experiences to help. And, like, for example, college was hard for me as a first generation college student. I didn't know what I was doing. I was there by myself in a new city, and classes were tough. And, I chose my university by going to the library, looking at one of those big reference books of all the colleges in the United States and like flipping the pages and being like, oh, that looks good. There was no one advising me, or, college counselors weren't really helpful. So I just kind of ended up where I ended up. And yeah, so college was really hard. I don't think I made the right choice as far as the kind of school that was a good fit for me. However, I made it through, obviously, with persistence. But yeah, so things like that, things that, stories that stay with me, people in the college who, maybe necessarily didn't believe in my abilities, people in high school who didn't believe that, maybe I was, college material. I think, those kinds of experiences, reflecting on that, and then, seeing my students and seeing that, they've been told the same things. They're not good enough. They're not smart enough. Like, you're not going to make it through. Like, you don't have the money. You don't have the brains. Just seeing the obstacles that they encounter, and just having that empathy and being able to like try to put myself in their shoes and feel what they're feeling, I think is what drives me, right? And just, the privilege of maybe, being a role model for someone else is something that I take really seriously. So yeah, I mean, I guess, does that answer your question?
It does indeed. She shared how she helped other teachers and herself get comfortable with working with students who could not go on video in class. Just because they were not able to get on video did not mean they didn't want to be there. Her innovation rooted in empathy really warmed my heart. When you're intent on wanting to make a difference in people's lives, how can you not be willing to try something different? And this isn't just in academia. I asked Brian Gaab, Managing Principal in Strategy and Innovation at CSAA and AAA Insurancer, about how he does product innovation and finds the courage to continue to innovate in a business setting. He too shares how thinking from the user perspective and empathizing with what they want really helps them find new solutions, even within constrained resources.
If you're not okay with letting things go, boy, innovation's the wrong career path for you, because you have to.
He shared a story of how their team found a new way of helping customers by focusing on asking what customers really want. Empathy was key, instead of providing the standard solution that all car insurance companies at that time were doing.
A handful of years ago, when Uber and Lyft were not necessarily kind of household names, they were certainly kind of growing organizations, but not necessarily household names. We had a unique kind of challenge that we identified. And that challenge was around our claims process. When somebody gets into an accident, we provide them a rental car while their car's in the shop, right? And that's a very kind of standard thing where us, along with almost every insurer out there, provides that benefit. It's not necessarily something revolutionary, but it's been a challenge for us, and I think for the industry as a whole, for a while, because there's a lot of opportunity for failure in there. First of all, when you've been in an accident, your car may or may not be drivable, right? And let's say it is drivable in best case scenario. You have to figure out a way to get that car to a shop, right? And then you have to get to a rental facility. And then we put all this onto our customers. Now we've done a whole lot over the course of many years to make that process substantially better, right? In many cases, we were able to co-locate, and there were lots of ways we tried to make that process better. But we still found that was a pain point within our business. And so we took a step back and said, as an innovation group, and said, look, we've been trying to kind of fix this process, but how can we fundamentally blow it up, right? What can we do to say, what does the customer really want? They really don't want a rental car. They really want to get from point A to point B. And so we came up with an offering. We partnered with Lyft in the early days of kind of them, frankly, getting off the ground, and ultimately offered credits to our customers as an alternative to rental vehicles, right? Because depending on what part of the country you're in, there may be lots of transportation solution options, and you can piece together your own situation, right? That may be beneficial. Or for somebody who just, we learned all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'll never forget the customer I spoke to who lived in a major metropolitan area. And she said, look, my car has a sticker on it, and that sticker allows me to park in my neighborhood. If I don't have that sticker, AKA the rental car you would have offered me, I would not have been able to park my car overnight, and I would have had to walk through an area that maybe wasn't as safe, right? So there was a whole lot, and that was not even something we thought about when we began this process, but the kind of learning journey brought us to that place. So that's an example, I would say, of a more kind of larger scale change to an existing product.
Wow, what a game changer indeed. By listening to the customers and asking what they really wanted, Brian and his team found not only new solutions for their customers, but also the courage to take on a solution that they never would have usually considered. I asked Brian for any advice he had to share for those who wanted to find the courage to innovate. Brian says to focus on execution as much as the ideas with empathy.
Fundamentally, understanding kind of those customer challenges, there's I guess I've kind of long believed there's no shortage of ideas, right? In my mind, that's like the furthest from the problem. Where the rubber meets the road, though, is the articulation, the communication of those ideas, and frankly, the ability to execute. I'll just as an example, like the concept of Uber. Uber wasn't the first one to come up with that concept, right? They came up with it at the right time, in the right place, with all of the kind of the right pieces, like the right leadership, all kinds of stuff, right? And then they ultimately kind of built, now a massive organization around that, and really have solved a lot of customer problems with that, right? Same could be said of Apple or anybody, right? Like they were not the only ones to think of the iPhone, right? Others had thought of the iPhone, but timing and know-how and all of the kind of skills were very critical to that.
This is where I mentioned the nuance earlier about creativity versus innovation. You need both. But the idea itself won't manifest unless you make it into a reality that becomes innovation. You'll be visiting back to some of these nuances as we revisit Brian and a few other friends in Innovation Job at our other podcast, Curious Monica, so stay tuned for it. But as I go back to my question I started with today, I hope these stories humble you and encourage you that being innovative and finding the courage to do something different is possible. You start with you. Emphasize with your audience. Surround yourself with others who believe in you. And don't give up. It will take practice, but each step along the way, you're not only paving new paths for yourself, but also for others, the users, your community, and your team. One thing is also true. Nothing will change unless we try doing something different. So what do you want to do differently? Where will you start today to make a difference? You can lead that change. Thanks for joining us today. This is Monica Kang, your host at Dear Workplace. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Thanks to our guests for sharing your insights for today's episode. Next time, we'll be learning more about how we can build a workplace for all generations. The workplace where everyone can feel a sense of belonging and safe room to innovate and work together, as we will have 5 generations with very different communication preferences and societal upbringing in the workplace. We'll untangle more of that in our next episode. So bring your questions and curiosity. See you soon.
Hi, I'm Sam, an audio engineer at InnovatorsBox. I hope you're enjoying Dear Workplace. My work in audio production will often have me working alone for long stretches of time just surrounded by technical equipment. This year I decided it was time to brighten things up some, so I branched out and I bought myself a candle. And you know, it really warms the place up. This show is brought together by our awesome podcast team, producer Sarah No, audio engineers Sam Lamert and Ravi Lad, website designer Akriti Pandey, graphic designer Monica Escobar, and Luke Helder on music. And of course, Dear Workplace is hosted and directed by Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. To continue the conversation of reimagining the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. Would love to hear what you enjoy and what I can convince Monica to talk about in our next episodes. See you next week.
Hey, it's Monica Kang. Thanks so much for joining us at Dear Workplace. We wouldn't be here without you, and we want to deeply thank every single one of you for being here and reflecting with us. Today, I wanted to ask for a small favor that will take less than 6 minutes. You see, we are competing in the 16th Annual Podcast Awards by the Podcast Awards, and we need your help. Dear Workplace is running for 4 categories and we'll love your vote. Best Female Hosted Podcast, Best Asian Hosted Podcast, Business and People's Choice. It's free to put in your nomination at podcastawards.com. So please take a moment to cast your love from July 1st to 31st, 2021. That's www.podcastawards.com. I'll put it in the show notes so you can check that out as well. So thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you again soon.